Okay, we are live.
What's up?
Okay, hey everybody, and welcome to the Product Angle Show. And on today's episode, I have Julian, and Julian is one of the speakers at Summer of Product. Welcome, Julian.
What's up? Hello. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So, before we get started, tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. Yeah. As you mentioned, I'm Julian. I'm originally from Germany. That's why I have a pretty thick accent, as some of you guys might might spot soon. I already have spotted. I'm a product manager right now at a company called Vungle, which is essentially an ad network for mobile game publishers. So we help mobile game publishers acquire users and also monetize their users through ads. And I lead a product team there, which is like very data science focused and very inward focused. And we essentially build algorithms that help, our publishers and advertisers just monetize better and acquire better users. So it's a really technical role. And on the side of like a small side hustle that I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about, PMKit, which essentially is a resource for people to just become better product managers or get into product management. And generally a lot of entrepreneurship, had like failed 2 companies before getting into tech. And my actual academic background is in economics and politics, and I used to work a lot for NGOs and social entrepreneurship and the German government all over the world. So it's kind of a mixed bag. Yeah.
Wow, definitely. So I guess I knew you had multiple roles and things like that, but talk to me about the NGOs. Maybe I missed that somewhere, but I find that fascinating. It's a good way to give back, and I love, the cause that NGOs have. Talk to me about what you did at the NGO you worked at, and what your role was, and tell me about that.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. I actually worked at 3 different NGOs. 2 of them were super exciting. One was Ashoka, which is essentially a social, like they fund social entrepreneurs and help social entrepreneurs collaborate. And I was like working in the Africa department for them. And so essentially like sourcing entrepreneurs, helping to find the right ones, connecting them. Essentially a lot of focus was on like knowledge sharing between the innovations that these entrepreneurs came up with, and essentially like reap the benefits from them. And that was a super interesting experience for me, because obviously it's an extremely entrepreneurial company. Almost everybody who works at Ashoka was an entrepreneur before that themselves. So it's incredible. You have very, very smart people, all really want to hustle and get stuff done for the bigger picture, for the bigger good. And so you learn a lot, but in itself it's also a little bit of a dysfunctional company, because you have a lot of high power, very driven people, extremely focused on mission. And there's very little structure in itself. And so that was really interesting to see, being in the company at the same time that's so mission driven, but at the same time kind of struggles to fully, in my opinion, fully capitalize on their potential. But they do amazing work, don't get me wrong. And then the second experience I had was like working for the German government in their development aid branch. And I worked in Namibia in the Ministry of Finance. And essentially my role was to help entrepreneurs learn about basic financial management, and so like budgeting, planning, and essentially run their businesses. And my job was just to go out into literally the slums and talk to those entrepreneurs and like figure out like what is their needs for education, and then produce those education materials, and then also work with the banks, obviously, to get them access to credits and so on. So it's really, really fascinating role.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Ashoka you'd mentioned, is that the Indian Ashoka, or is that a different Ashoka?
Yeah, so it's like it's an international like NGO.
Okay.
So they headquartered in DC, but they have branches all over, right? And they fund entrepreneurs all over, and they're really strong in India, actually, where I also briefly worked for a small social enterprise from Ashoka, funded by Ashoka, actually, and they focus on like greenification of schools, which was really, really interesting in itself. Yeah.
Definitely. That's awesome. I like that. Tell us something that we cannot Google about you.
Sure.
Because I didn't know about the NGO thing, so I think
Yeah. I
tell us
guess
something
that's
else.
the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should have mentioned it. Yeah. No. I think one that when I was in high school, like last year of high school, I managed a German rap group, and I kind of organized like events for them and kind of got them together with like singers and like essentially mixed. Like I didn't mix or produce the albums, but essentially made sure that we have like a variety of artists on an album. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Very different. Just generally being in entertainment at that time, like 16, 17, having no idea what to do and like trying to organize events and like trying to like crossbreed product creativity. This is really interesting. Yeah, and I mean, obviously it didn't become big, but I think they're still around. But it was a really cool experience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that sounds awesome. Just when you talk about it, it gets me excited because that's so many different skills. You know, selling tickets, finding a venue, getting people interested, organizing. There's so many skills you learn from doing that, and people don't realize the work it takes to promote, anything.
For sure. And also, yeah, just generally bringing out the quality and yeah, just bringing together talented people is not enough, right? Like there needs to just be also the right collaboration between these people, and then also promoting the content. Back then, I mean, that's 2007, very different time than now, right? It was like we had a MySpace page, for instance. So it was like very different times. But
yeah. No, definitely, that's cool. I love MySpace when it came out. It was so cool and popular back then.
For sure, yeah.
All right, so you're the founder of PMKit. Talk us through that, because I checked that out, and I think some of the things that you offer in PMKit are very valuable. So talk us through, your idea and how you came about it and putting it out there and creating the website. Talk us through that process.
Yeah, for sure. So I work on it with a friend of mine, with whom I like did grad school together, and he's now in product management as well. He ended it kind of a little bit before me, like 2-3 years before me. Worked for Zenefits and like Facebook, some really like marquee names in product management. And when I got at Bungle, when I got into product management, it's a startup, a smaller company. They do great training, but obviously like you get pushed just into product management. You just have to figure it. There's like a lot of things you just have to figure out on the job.
Yeah.
And I started reading a lot of books, listening to podcasts, doing all the typical stuff that you do when you end up in a new role, just to kind of prepare yourself to do the job well. But yeah, what I found is that there was no resource that had everything very accessible in one place. And by that, I mean, accessible is like not too much volume, make it super practical, really easy to understand, and just a pleasure to work with, right? There's obviously like amazing resources out there, but they're often super comprehensive, right? And you cannot just like look something up really quickly and then implement it. And that kind of was like the idea that we're like, okay, why is there no resource out there that helps you understand like end-to-end product management and gives you like methods for each stage of product management, with very like practical instructions and templates to master every stage, right? And that's essentially what we did. So we built out a end-to-end playbook for product management, over 50 methods. Some like they're all super like time-proven methods. And we actually built it off how Facebook built their products. So it's definitely like oriented around like the major product-first companies and how they successfully launch products. And yeah, gotten really good reviews so far, and we soft launched it. And yeah, it's a lot of fun, and just like building a product yourself and launching it yourself and doing the growth for it is super challenging, and it's a great learning experience for me.
Excellent. I like that. Now, what I want to talk to you about is you were in sales and you've made that jump into product management. So I guess I want to get to how you make that transition from sales to product management, but talk us through, the way I understand it is that you were in sales, you moved to analytics, and then you became a product manager. So just talk us through your career trajectory from, starting off to gaining all these different skills to moving into product management.
For sure, yeah. I think so. Starting off in just generally Bungle or like ad tech, the space in itself it's like a very technical space, and it's like consultative like selling. So it's like you do a little bit of cold emailing, cold calling, but you're like in the same boat as with the client, right? So it has like a very, very similar touch like consulting. So I was like, when I started in sales, to be honest, I started in it because I needed a visa and wanted to stay in the US. And I ended definitely sales with the idea. I was like, I just came out of grad school, and like, why should we do doing sales, right? Like, I almost felt like too good for it, to be honest. Which completely proven like wrong in the end. Is like the best job to prepare me for product, actually. So I entered sales with that feeling, and then just really fast like learned a lot about the customers, just talking every day to customers, like visiting customers, talking through their business with them, like not even trying to sell, just like talking through the problems that they face every day, how they scale their products, how they scale their company, how they deal with HR issues, right? Because they're mainly small companies that we work with. So super interesting and valuable experience for me in terms of getting to talk to customers and really developing this like empathy for customers, and really trying to understand what the problems are that they're trying to solve, and how we help them and don't help them, or where we can do better as a company, right? So that's what I did for like a year. I started off just doing that in the US, and then I did like our business expansion into Brazil, which was super interesting as well. And then because it's a very analytical space, ads, and I did like my master's in economics. It was kind of this like natural transition into like a analytics role, which was still in sales. It was like in sales operations. So and then that kind of like gave me the analytical chops of like looking at like how are we growing in terms of revenue, like where do we need to do more, and at the same time I was like still working closely with salespeople on the ground. And we started talking to this very, very big, they were back then small and now really big customer, and they were just like talking to us about this new product that one company was building, and they really loved it. And essentially we developed a manual prototype for that salesperson and myself, and then kind of push that into the roadmap of the company. And then the product completely took off, and that was kind of my way into product.
Interesting. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I love how you initially felt that sales was not a valuable role, but then as you got into it, you realized that the skills that you picked up from sales was absolutely valuable in your PM kind of role. And I love that, because that's what I think a lot of people think, that sales is a good career, but it's not for them. And it feels salesy because there's a lot of sales people out there who are just sending cold emails that say buy from us, or sending cold outreach programs that have no value to the person they're sending to. It's all about me. Look at my product, look at me. And it becomes very salesy. But if you do sales properly, I think there's so many skills that can be learned about empathy, the customer, the user, what's helping them. And as product managers, that's what you need. And I think, and that's one of the reasons why I've asked you to speak at Summer of Product. We're doing this because I really think that product managers should have an understanding of the sales process and how sales people and sales teams work, because as part of our role as product managers, understanding the user, understanding the customer is very important. And if you've never been through a sales process, if you've never bought enterprise software, how can you really build something that is helping somebody? So I feel that that's a skill that every product manager should be aware of. Not necessarily saying that every product manager needs to be in sales, but they should have a good understanding of it, because you may need to be on the call with a customer demoing a software, your product or something, and you need to be able to understand that process.
Yeah, absolutely. I can agree more. And I think, obviously there's a lot of ways to into product management. Some of them are very technical, but at our company right now, like the number one path into product internally is through sales. And the reason is just really, on the one side, it's a bit more of a analytical sales organization that we have. But at the same time, it's like the knowledge that I acquired 2-3 years ago still gives me such a big insight and advantage at my current day job that it's just like super essential for me. And I'm really happy I did it, and really understand like how a sale is done. Really understand, as you mentioned, like the empathy for the end user, right? And the problem that you're solving for them, and the problem that you're not solving for them, that you should be solving for them. So yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah,
absolutely. How do you handle rejection? Because I think a lot of times people are fearful of sales or sales roles because there's going to be a lot of rejection. And a good, well-crafted email at the right time can be a good thing, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort to really research that person that you're sending that email to. It's easier just to put it in a automation software with just changing the name at the front and sending out to 300 people and hoping 3 people reply.
Yeah.
So how do you handle rejection when you first started that sales role?
Yeah, I guess for me it wasn't as big of a transition because I founded 2 companies before, and I did sales before for those companies, and there the rejection was a lot harder. But yeah, just generally, I think the rejection, you need to reflect a little bit on it, right? Like on the one side, it's like, is this a rejection because like I'm just reaching out at the wrong time? Do they have already like the problem figured out that I'm trying to solve for them? Is it just not relevant for them, right? And then you just got to move on. And then I think the rejection of no, you're not offering the right thing for me, or like no, you're not like solving the problem 100% for me, so that's why I give you a rejection. And I think that's where it actually becomes really interesting. And that's feedback. And that's where the second, like it's an automatic transition into product, right? So that's what I actually really, in that sense, like started embracing that type of rejection and figuring out why we couldn't sometimes sell something. So yeah.
Cool. Now you mentioned you've started 2 other companies. Talk us through what they were, and can we talk about those 2 companies?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one was like fairly early on when I was a freshman in 2008, 2009. And it was like a grocery / beer delivery service in Switzerland. So back then in Switzerland, like shops would close at literally 5 p.m. And like if you wanted to get beer, like you had to, or like pizza or whatever, you had to either spend a lot of money from restaurants, or you had to make it out of school before like 4 or 5 p.m. to buy it, right? So it's a very clear problem for us to solve back then. And we really just like from one day to another just said like, okay, I have a car, like let's get a credit of 5K and just like build up our own stock. And we print flyers, and then we start delivering, right? And in the beginning, it went really well, but then it kind of died down over time. But which was really interesting. At some point, that transition came from where not students were actually ordering from us anymore, but like older people and families. And which is actually a way more interesting market, right? If you think of Instacart, for instance, nowadays and so on. But we had actually really great product market fit, because the people who knew of us, which weren't a lot because we weren't like targeting them and that were in that age group, they were like buying every week from us. So it was like amazing retention. And yeah, I think back then we just like didn't really see the value of it, right? And didn't think beyond what we actually had intended to achieve for young people. And we were like not flexible enough of just like switching and looking at a new user group and focusing on their problems. And then, yeah, we were just like, it was still profitable, it was still okay, but like it wasn't good enough to keep running. Yeah. And I think if we made a transition, it was also the time when the iPhone came out and so on. We could have absolutely like been one of the first companies to really master that market. That's now really huge, right? So I think that like in retrospect, I actually learned a lot from that experience. And then the second company was very different. It was like doing my grad school. It was a information intelligence product for hedge funds.
Okay.
So essentially what we did is we aggregated news in shape of a timeline. So you can really search an issue and understand like the past of it, what's currently going on, the projections. I did a bunch of fancy things like mood analysis of the news and correlation with stock price. It was really nifty and cool. The problem was we just built the tool and never really focused on the user. Okay. And then try to like take the tool, the technology that we build, and then try to sell it to the users. And while there, like, I think there was potential for it, I think it's really, really hard to start with the solution first and then make it work for a customer. And I think that was like, yeah, a really important experience for me. And then the team fell apart. It was like a lot of founder drama, and then which is also like a crazy experience, but also really valuable experience. Yeah. And yeah, I started at Vangel actually after that.
Excellent. So to go back to your first company, how were, I guess, your target audience, students or the older generation, how were they ordering it from you? Was it, you know, at that time, did you just put up a simple website, or was it, you know, you had to call somebody? Yeah. Talk me through the mechanics pre, you know, the iPhone era.
Yeah, it was actually not easy, because it was that phase where definitely like websites were a thing, right? Like people were ordering stuff online, but like food ordering wasn't yet quite there. It was still a little bit sketchy to just go online and order like a pizza from somewhere, right? So yeah, we definitely had to have the phone, and that was, I would say, like 80% of the calls were coming through of like over the landline essentially. Yeah. But yeah, we had a website up where people could look at the prices and see that. But then we also integrated with a very, very early on shopping provider, e-commerce shopping provider. So it's like a platform. It's almost like an Uber Eats, or like like aggregated delivery services. And I think, yeah, we got a few sales through that. But it was definitely like, yeah, the beginning of where we're like thinking, it was like, oh, this is definitely going to be a thing, but it's not quite yet. So is it worth it to integrate or not? And yeah, but mainly it was like really like, go to the website, call us, and we come.
Yeah, that's definitely. I mean, it's, when we think about it now, it's so easy to think that you can just pick up your phone, pick an app, and the food will be delivered in the next, you know, 30 to 45 minutes, and it's right there. And we take that for granted. But back then, pre iPhone days, I'm sure it was, you know, people called you up, and you know, you had to talk about it for, you know, 5 minutes or whatever it is, take down their credit card information or what have you, run it through, and then have someone go pick up and then deliver. So while fundamentally it's still the same, but the dynamics of how the iPhone just changed, how easy it is, has changed.
For sure, absolutely, yeah. And I think if we kept it running for one more year, I think our business would have looked very different. And if we also made that mental switch from like only targeting students as interesting users to actually target like older people and families who really depend on a delivery service and actually also have the money to order, right? It would have been a way smarter thing to do. But I mean, I guess you learn from those experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And the second business, I think the takeaway that I had from listening to you was understand your user first, understand your target audience, and then figure out what you could do to serve them, but also why they should buy from you versus a competitor.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to be religious about your users. Like your users, like do not spend time building a product before you really understand what the problem is that they have, and then really you dissected that. Like if you think you have an understanding of the problem of your users, like you probably only see the tip of the iceberg, or like still, right? Like you need to do more research. You need to talk to so many users, and you have to really do it in a structured way. And then figure out what is the highest impact user need that you need to solve for, right? So yeah, absolutely, you have to be religious about that.
Definitely. Now, moving fast forward back to your current role and as a product manager at Fungal, what does your typical day look like? So, because ad tech is something that I don't have much experience in.
Yeah,
and, I know it's very data driven, but talk us through what like a typical day for you looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, just a note on that. Like my team is also really inward looking. So we essentially create algorithms, right?
Okay.
Or like optimize our algorithms that help publishers monetize better with us and like give advertisers the right and the better users. So I think in its definition, it's a little bit different than most of the product roles. But yeah, my role is essentially I work with the team. Like we monitor the current products that we have out there. So we have to look at literally the performance of our algorithms that we have out there. We usually launch a lot of experiments that either learn different about the user data or explore it different, or add like different multipliers to it, right? So a lot of the day-to-day is going into understanding like how are we currently performing with our experiments. And then the second part is really understanding what is like the needs that we need to solve for in the future, right? So like which new like trends are emerging for our publishers and advertisers, and like what are the algorithms that we need to build to really support that for them, right? For instance, right now, a big thing in mobile ad tech is the emergence of header bidding, so like real-time bidding on ad impressions, which is very normal in web, but not yet in mobile applications. And as you can imagine, like going from a let's say like non-real time to absolute high frequency real time bidding is very different, right? And there's a lot of algorithm implications for that. And so what the team does is like essentially break like what my job is, like break that down and try to understand like what are the requirements for us to build that successfully.
Definitely. Now, I love the fact that you mentioned experiments, because I think that's a big part of every product manager, every founder. You try experiments, you review the results, and see where you can improve for the next iteration. Now, as you run experiments, how do you collect the data? Do you have a particular software that you use to have everything linked in there so you can see what the objectives were, what the results were, and then you can build upon it? How do you store all that information?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I mean, we have like a lot of data warehouses where all that information lives, and we produce an insane amount of data, right? Like we show like hundreds of millions of impressions a day, and there's also all the data for ads that we didn't serve, right? Like so there's a much more data under the hood. And yeah, so what we do is like once we launch an experiment, we use a tool called Looker, which is essentially like a relational database interface. And there, you can track all the results, like how is one model doing versus another model, or some strategy that you implemented for optimization, like how is that doing versus the other one. And then it's like really like going in there and looking at the data and digging really, really deep on how it's doing. And in itself, just using Looker I really highly recommend the tool, but you also need to develop some skills for it. But yeah, I love it. And we have pretty clear KPIs when we launch new experiments. And so we measure experiments against other experiments, and also the baseline like primary model that we're running.
Excellent. Now, from your perspective, what are the skills that you feel that a product manager should focus on developing or should have?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important that we talked already about it is empathy, right?
Yeah.
I think you need to develop a lot of empathy for the user, for who you like developing the solution, and need to understand their situation, their problems. But you also really need to develop empathy for your team. Like you really need to understand. It's also part of my job. So you really need to understand the issues and the blockers that your engineering team is facing, right?
Yeah.
And why can't they be as productive as they want to be, or why are certain things not working the way they should be working, and how can you like influence other departments to help them, right? So that's really important. But you also need to develop empathy for like other internal teams like sales,
Yes.
but also leadership, right? Like often product managers get really frustrated with like a change of direction from leadership, but I think you just also need to understand where they're coming from and really develop empathy for them, right?
Yeah.
Why they're making certain decisions and why it sometimes has to go really fast. So that's really important. And I think the second skill that comes with that, and that is, I can't overemphasize how important it is, and also how hard it is to gain that skill, is just communication.
Yeah.
I think if you are not a good communicator, you can be really smart, you can have the right solution, you can have it all figured out. If you can't communicate it, get people on the same page, and then into the same boat, it's not going to work for you. And I think that's just like a skill you have to keep on, like empathy as well. You have to keep on building over time, and you're never done with it. And I think both of those skills together, really separate also a product manager from like a product leader, right? So yeah, I can. Those are I think if you really had to work on two skills that are really hard to get, I think those are the two skills. And then obviously like you need to understand tech and need to have hunger for getting stuff done.
Yeah, definitely. Now, what have you learned now, after years of experience, that you wish you learned when you first started?
Yeah, absolutely. I think on the one side, the communication part that I just mentioned, absolutely critical. And like I'm a solid, good communicator, but I think really understanding all the angles that people are trying to understand the issues you're solving, and like communicating clearly to those stakeholders is extremely hard. And I wish I developed that earlier, because you can.
Yeah.
And I'm still working on it right now. And and then the other one is, I mean, I had that before as well, but I it's the same as like you have to keep doing it. It's just like learn how to get stuff done. Like it doesn't matter if it's like pretty. It doesn't matter if it's like a textbook solution or not. You just have to learn how to get stuff done. And I think it's a great like way into product for people who don't come from technical space, right? Like they can get on side projects and just get stuff done, like show that they can deliver. And I think that really matters in product management.
Definitely, I agree with you. Just get stuff done, ship it out there, and iterate based on feedback.
Exactly.
Okay, and final question. For people looking into getting into product management, what advice would you give them, for someone who's thinking of product management as a career?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great. So I think the advice that I have, and I remember that when I tried to get into product management, it's like a lot of people tell you it's extremely hard to get in, super competitive. It's like the iBanking in 2000, in the mid 2000s, right? Or so.
Yeah.
It is really hard, but it's absolutely doable. If you want to get into product management, it's 100% doable. The other thing that I really would recommend to get into it, don't wait on getting your job to get into product management. You can become a product manager with your own projects. Like I'm doing right now with PMKit, or I did before with my own startups. Just focus on something that you have in your hand and you control, something you can build, ideally with engineers or the designer, and bring something to fruition and to completion. I think that then you already are a product manager, and you can show that you can get stuff done, and you will get hired. And I think just as a career in itself, I mean, I'm still really early on in my career as a product manager. But yeah, I think it's exciting, and there's so many angles to it. As I said, right now, like I'm going down the machine learning and AI part or data science part of product management. But there's so many other variations of it that I think are just fascinating. And yeah, I can't recommend it enough to get into it and yeah, just try it out and see if you like it. I think even if you don't want to be a career-long product manager, I think it's a wonderful position to have had for like a few years.
Definitely.
And then, yeah, lastly, definitely go check out PMKit.tech. It'll definitely help you get into product management. Yeah.
There it is. Absolutely. Well, Julian, thank you so much. I appreciate you spending some time with me, and I'm super excited that you're a part of Summer of Product starting June 1.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I'm also really excited, and I really enjoyed this. And yeah, for anybody who has any questions, feel free to follow up with me on LinkedIn or yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks. Cheers.
Okay.